Hello, and welcome to the Knowledge Facebook Lives Q&As. I'm Tom from the communications team. Thank you for joining me today. At Keele, we have a vast amount of knowledge across our studies, and we thought we'd get some of our academics live on stream with us to answer some of your questions. And with everything that's going on now, we couldn't find someone more perfect than Dr Jonathon Parker. Jonathan, thank you for joining me today. I'm sure it's been an absolute whirlwind over the past 48 hours. So we're going to kind of get into it, ask you as many questions as we can. For those of you who are watching, we've put an Instagram story post on our page at Keele University. It's got a little question box in there where people have already asked some questions, so we'll be asking those as we go. But if you've got a question as you're watching, feel free to drop it in the comments and I can ask that as we go along. But Jonathan, from your point of view, a lot of us kind of dip into this as and when, but someone who studies this 24/7, how has the last 48 hours been for you? What is your take on the last 48 hours?
Well, this has been pretty wild. The election is very, very close. It's a very tight election. I haven't seen one this close since 2000, which was an absolute nightmare. It came down to a tie in Florida. This one, you've got 5 states where it's potentially tied. So it's, and again, there's been record turnout. This is an amazingly dramatic moment.
So one question that's come in, a very obvious one, is who do you think's going to win?
There are 5 states in the toss-up category. I would say that Biden it has an advantage at the moment. He has to win either Pennsylvania or any 2 of the remaining states. So again, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia in particular. So he's got lots of pathways to victory. Trump has only one. He's got to win 4 of those 5 states, including Pennsylvania, and which will probably finish most of their counting today, hopefully. But we'll see.
And so we've seen some. I mean, some people say unsurprisingly, but we've seen some strange things come from Donald Trump in terms of the lawsuits now that he's filing, him declaring victory early. Do you think any of those lawsuits will be successful, and kind of what's the next process for him? He's obviously filed in a few states, but what does that look like now for Trump if he wants to try and as he says, stop the voting?
Yes, I mean he's been doing this for weeks. We knew this was part of the game plan. He's not exactly subtle about it, so it's not a mystery. Yeah, he wants to suppress the vote. He's been actively trying to reduce the number of days you could vote, because you can do early voting in the United States. You can vote up to 2 or 3 weeks before the election. He's tried to reduce the number of days after the election that an absentee ballot could come in. This is controversial because he appointed a very controversial member of the head of the post office who wrecked the place, basically. And again, the Postal Service has been absolutely just riven with inefficiencies and lots of federal court cases about that. So again, many states are trying to extend the number of days you can submit ballots. And Trump's been fighting that everywhere. So that we had a Supreme Court case about that. Supreme Court has ruled in Pennsylvania that they can have 3 extra days. In my state of North Carolina, they can have a full week. So yeah, a lot of these counts will keep going for the next week because we still got ballots coming in.
So if he's filed a lot of these lawsuits, if it turns out that he actually wins, will he drop them all? Will he just kind of snap his fingers and they'll all disappear?
Well, yeah, I mean, most of the lawsuits are around counting further ballots and trying to relax these. A lot of these were about things in the past. How strict are you with absentee ballots? One of the requirements many states have is that you have to have a witness signature. And in a time of COVID, getting someone outside your family to sign your ballot is a bit of a pain. So, a lot of states just said, oh, we'll relax that and you can submit it afterwards. Okay, well, they sued over that. And again, a federal judge, he won that one. And again, they are requiring witness statements. So, that's part of the process. Winning any of these court cases won't prevent, the ultimate, counting of the ballots. He's just trying to get as many of them thrown out on technicalities as he can, because it's such a tight election. If he can just throw out a few hundred out of millions, then he could potentially win a few of these states.
So someone's asked on Instagram, if Biden wins, is this a sign of rising rejection of right-wing populism in the Anglosphere?
Well, I wouldn't go too far. Yeah, this has been record turnout, and this election holds is right on a knife edge. We don't know who's won. So, regardless of who wins this election, I wouldn't see it as a complete repudiation of Trump because half the country voted for him. Well, not half. To be fair, okay, this is not a democratic election in the sense of counting all the votes. Biden has won the popular vote by about 3 million, which is exactly what the polls predicted. But again, you count it state by state. So Trump may yet win the election in the Electoral College, but he doesn't need a majority of the voters for that.
And so we've seen record turnout this election, and is it true? Biden got the most votes of any presidential nominee. Is that a fact?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of democracy, is this actually a good election? Then is this a good form of democracy? I know that people are saying that this is kind of people are almost describing it to the end of the world. It's all very bad, but actually a lot of people went out to vote, and surely that is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, so far this has been a pretty smooth election. There doesn't seem to have been too much internet or foreign interference in the process. Trump tried his little October surprise by concocting this story about Hunter Biden's laptop, and that just went nowhere. So, again, we were worried about all these things happening. We were worried about violence at the polling booths, and it seems to have gone off remarkably smoothly, considering that. And so, yeah, everyone seems to have turned out to vote. The count, it just takes time. If it's a really close election, you've got to do the count really carefully. It's no joke to do these ballots because you're talking about 24 actual elections on each ballot, so it takes a while to count them. And it seems to have all gone off. Process-wise, this was great. In terms of the future of the U.S., it's going to be more conflict. Yeah, so it depends on which side you're on. As a political scientist, I think this is great. The election's gone off pretty smoothly. We'll see what happens with Trump's court cases, but for the most part, even his own appointed judges have refused to give him very much time in terms of the charges of voter fraud. There's no evidence for voter fraud whatsoever. So again, I'm really happy with the election. In terms of the future of the U.S.'s political position, that's depends on which side of the aisle you're on. But it's going to be divided government for sure.
So we've had a question from Alex on Facebook that says, if Trump loses, how do you think his re-election campaign will be viewed in comparison to other one-term presidents such as Bush and Carter? Seems much closer than theirs were.
Yeah, this could have been a blowout for the Democrats. In fact, the Democrats were kind of hoping for that, and this has been a big disappointment to them. I mean, for Donald Trump to come in, it depends on how you handicap the race. Before COVID, I'd have said he was going to win because the economy was booming. No one was really blaming him for anything particular. But post-COVID, I mean, the American people are in no illusions about who's responsible for the really terrible American response to this. They blame Trump for it, and he gets very bad approval ratings for that. But then they give him credit for the economy pulling out a little bit. And so this was a very tight race. And for him to do that in the midst, 250,000 people dead, largely due to some of his lack of leadership, I would never have expected him to be hanging on by his fingernails at this point and potentially win the election. He could still win this.
And so another question from Hugo is, oh no, sorry, not from Hugo, from, I've lost my question now. Oh yeah, it's from Hugo. From Hugo. So it says, will Trumpism outlive Trump? So if he doesn't get elected, will Trumpism still carry on post this election?
It will. I'm not sure how long it will last. But again, we had polarization before Trump. Okay, Trump's taken it and hypercharged it, but we may lose the Trumpism, but we're going to keep right-wing populism and we're going to keep polarization. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Trump hasn't lost yet, but if he does lose, there'll still be divided government. The Senate will still be Republican, and I would expect there to be huge partisan fighting over the next 2 years.
Another question from Liam is, if Trump keeps, if Biden wins and loses the Senate, will that how will that fare for him? Is he going to have a tough time as a president of the United States? with the results going that way?
Oh yes. I mean, Biden's whole campaign was based around the notion of let's have a reset. Let's try to avoid this nasty partisanship. Let's go back to the way it was. Biden was the senator for many, many years, and he's friends with Mitch McConnell. He's friends with Lindsey Graham. Yeah, he knows all these people in the Senate who are in leadership positions, and he wants to go back to those the era of the '90s, basically, when you had people across different parties cooperating with each other. I don't think that's possible in this day and age. The partisan divisions are so deep. I suspect the Republican Senate's going to make his life hell. They have to approve every cabinet position. They have to approve every ambassador. They have to approve every major agency he wants to put ahead of. So again, if Mitch McConnell wants to completely wreck the Biden presidency, he can, and I expect him to do so. If I were the Republicans, I would say stop Biden from doing anything, blame him for everything, and go into the midterms in 2 years' time and try to retake the House.
So we're heading back over to Instagram now. Continuing on with Biden, really, someone's asked, would any other Democratic candidate have done better than Biden, do you think? And if so, why?
That's an impossible hypothetical. I mean, okay, from my personal point of view, okay, Biden's not the greatest candidate. He's not the quickest in terms of speaking. He's an awful debater. And by the way, he's been that way his entire career. He's run for president before and gone nowhere. The reason he was such a popular candidate this year is because he was the anti-Trump candidate. He's very moderate. He's a deeply likable person. There's a famous video from Lindsey Graham making the rounds. I mean, it was from a few years ago, but basically saying, if you don't like Joe Biden, you should examine yourself because you got something wrong with you. Again, he's very popular. He has very low disapproval ratings. So he was the perfect foil to Donald Trump. He was very experienced in government. He was part of the Obama administration, which amongst Democratic circles is very popular. He seemed to be the perfect opposite. Again, if you want an energetic, candidate who's going to really force through the agenda of the left, he's not your man. And so there was worries he would split the party. But again, the hatred of Donald Trump overcame all, it seems. Although he hasn't won yet, so we'll wait and see. Would Bernie Sanders have done better? The problem Trump's had is that Trump has tried to divide the nation. He's tried to portray Biden as this wild-eyed socialist. People just look at him and think, nah, he really is just such a bland candidate, which in most times is not an advantage. When you're running against Donald Trump, I think it was. So I don't think another Democratic candidate would have done as well, because Trump has really failed to make Biden into this big evil sort of force in the nation. No one believes that.
And obviously the polls were predicting that Biden would have a much bigger win than we've seen. Were you expecting that, or are you always quite skeptical of the polls?
Well, we were all skeptical of the polls, but I mean, they were really bad in some states. We'll wait for the final result. A lot of these counts are taking a long time. And, my own state of North Carolina, I was always skeptical that Biden was going to win that. It's a very Republican state. It's a very conservative state. It voted for Obama in 2008. It voted for Republicans after that. So, a number of political scientists were handicapping the polls and saying, okay, where it's close, no, North Carolina's not going to go Democratic. So it wasn't a big shock, and the polls were only off by a couple of points. They were within the margin of error. If you've got a tight election, opinion polls are extraordinarily bad at predicting the winner. And that's just the way it goes. If you've got two football teams that are equally matched, it's really hard to predict who's going to win.
Do you think they're their own worst enemy almost? Because if it is a tight election and they say that Biden's going to win, that obviously might put some of his supporters on they might relax and feel that they don't need to vote, whereas the opposition then will get rallied to make sure that their vote counts.
Yeah, and again, on the same side, saying that Trump's going to lose, that could demoralize the right. It could mean that a lot of people think, well, there's no point, I'm not going to turn out. But nobody seems to have been affected by that. I mean, we had a record turnout. And again, nobody quite believed the polls. The Democrats were deeply paranoid about this going in. They were quietly confident that they would be okay. but they're pretty disappointed. The polls were pointing to a number of wins in different states that haven't pulled off. But again, they weren't wrong across the board like they were in 2016. 2016, they all were wrong in the same direction in the Midwest. And that's not the case this time. If you look at Minnesota, again, the Midwest, very similar to Wisconsin, similar to Michigan, similar to Pennsylvania. Biden won exactly where he should have. He was way ahead, but not in the other states. So again, there is a problem with polling, but we're not quite sure what it was this time. It's going to take a while.
Heading back over to Facebook here, question saying, looking at the results in Texas, is it safe to say that Texas is now a purple / swing state? If so, what do the Republicans have to do to keep Texas red in the future?
Appeal to Hispanic voters. It's very simple. The predictions of Texas going purple have been around as long as I have, and so the Democrats keep saying we're going to take it back every year. I mean, it's not happening this year. Trump won it pretty handily. And again, this is a campaign in which he was overtly being racist towards Mexicans, and so surprise, surprise, Hispanic voters aren't too in favor of him. So it's pretty easy. In 2012, the Republican Party, when it lost to Barack Obama, had a big committee that looked at this, and they had a big moment of introspection. And the committee said, okay, what we need to do is we need to appeal to minority voters. We cannot be a party that doesn't appeal to the young, that doesn't appeal to Black and Hispanic voters, Asian voters. And so we need to be more compassionate conservatives like George W. Bush. Okay, then they went and nominated Donald Trump. So they basically chucked that plan in the bin. Now, Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate, more or less the leader of the Republican Party at this point, is saying the same thing again. He's saying, look, we need to this election is troubling. We need to find a way of appealing to more voters. Their tactic thus far has been Trump has been adamant that he would suppress the vote. If everyone voted, my God, Republicans would never win. Okay, that's not a good position to be in long term. And it is a problem. And it will be interesting to see if the Republicans try to reset. Now, again, the Trump train has left the station. The Republican Party has been remade in his image. It's anti-immigrant. It's a bit nativist. It's showing support for conspiracy theory groups. It's showing support for white supremacy groups and militias. I mean, the Republican Party's got a big problem on its hands, and it needs to deal with that. So I don't know what the solution is going to be that they take. You're going to have a fight between the moderate wing of the party and the right, but currently the right is in the ascendancy. Trump has, again, remade that party in his image. So the party will have to completely do an about face if it wants to do that.
So we've got loads and loads of questions coming in, which is brilliant. Mike says, Dr. JP, you were a great lecturer. Shout out to you there. Another one from Jack. Jack asks, hello again, John. Do you expect Biden to run for re-election? I think this is if he wins, I'm guessing. Do you expect Biden to run for re-election, or do you think he has a plan to pass the torch early, like he spoke about? Because he will be getting on, won't he, by the time if he gets to re-election?
Yep. He will be the oldest president for his first term if he's elected. He hasn't won yet. Let's be careful here. There are 5 swing states. They are on a knife edge, and they're going to have to recount as well because they're so tight. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, I mean, if he gets in, well, first of all, people who run for president do not give up power voluntarily. He will think about running again, but again, he is quite elderly, and so we'll have to see where he is. I would think he won't run again, but I don't think I think his intent is to run again. I don't think anyone intends to retire. It's forced upon them. But he's got a very, very dynamic running mate in Kamala Harris. She is again a moderate like him, with a law enforcement background, fairly young, again Black and an Asian background, someone who could potentially unite the wings of the Democratic Party. But she's going to have a 4-year job interview essentially. So we'll see how she does. But he won't voluntarily give up. No, it will be forced upon him by the party, or he'll either be too tired or ill to run in 4 years' time. The presidency is a really taxing, hard job, and we'll see how he does. Ronald Reagan was in the early stages of dementia when he left office. We know he was falling asleep during meetings and things like that. So, I think people would be troubled if he ran again at the age of almost the age of 80.
And you mentioned the vice presidents there, and I've been hearing quite a bit of talk about this, that we could see the battle of the vice presidents taking place, with Mike Pence trying to run for president as well at some point in the future. Do you think that's a likelihood to happen?
Well, let's see what happens. If Trump wins, then yes, Mike Pence will be the front runner. If Mike Pence is part of a losing ticket, it's unclear how popular he'll be in the Republican Party. And again, what does the Republican Party want to do? Where is their future going to be? It's really unclear that Pence would be the front runner if they had an open primary. There are other people who would like to lead the party. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. Again, these are the same people who are running against Trump and who are deeply ineffective against Trump. Pence was deeply ineffective against Trump as well, I would add. He was picked because he was a perfect foil for Trump's presidency. So I wouldn't think he's going to be a front runner. He'll be up there. People will know his name. He's popular amongst evangelicals. But if you want to be a more moderate, inclusive party, he's not your candidate.
Another question from Facebook from Liam. Again, lots of people looking forward to the future. Liam says, win or lose for Trump, do the Republicans have any frontrunners for 2024? Obviously, we just mentioned Mike Pence, but is there anyone else in the party who could be a frontrunner?
Let's see what happens to Trump. And then, the same people who ran against Trump. Again, some of them had their careers tanked on the basis of this. But again, you're going to have a war for the soul of the party going on. Both the Democrats and the Republicans are going to be, not civil war is too much of a violent term for this, but there is going to be a battle between left and right in both parties, and it depends on which side is in the ascendancy. I could easily see Mitt Romney trying to run again as a moderate. You've got again Marco Rubio, who's a Hispanic, young Hispanic senator from Florida. You've got Ted Cruz, again a Hispanic from Texas. Those people could be much more of a symbol of inclusiveness than Mike Pence, for example. So they've got plenty of front, and there's tons of people who come out the woodwork. I mean, if you think of the Democrats and all the different people who are running, we didn't think it was going to be Biden at the time. He was not very popular up until the point where it all came together all at once, and suddenly he won everything. So it was really uncertain. You cannot predict presidential candidates. There's no such thing as a front runner who's just going to get it. If that were the case, then it would have been Jeb Bush against Hillary Clinton, and it wasn't.
Someone has just mentioned. Luke said, "Do you think we will have a President Bush 3 with Jeb going for the Republican nomination in the future? Do you think he has any chance again?"
Jeb really tanked last time. On paper, he's perfect, and it's difficult to say. I thought he was going to be the front runner going into the last primary. This is 2016. He's perfect on paper. He's been governor of Florida, which is a big state. He's got Hispanic connections. He speaks Spanish. He's good for this sort of inclusiveness of the party. He's seen as sort of moderate, much like his father. The problem is that the Bush name is both an advantage and a curse. It associates himself with the Bush dynasty, which puts people off, but it gives him access to a huge pile of money. So, all the money in the world didn't buy him the primary victory. So it didn't matter in the end. People thought they just didn't get excited at all by his candidacy. Biden was the same, by the way. So we'll see where that goes. Biden was a very similar candidate. He went in 1988. He ran against Obama, and his candidacy went nowhere. Nobody was excited by this guy. Again, I think Trump set up the perfect conditions for Biden to win the nomination. Who knows where we'll be in 4 years' time.
So we got a question from Joe. Joe's asked, unsure how caught up you are in Georgia. I'm sure you're very caught up, John. Do you actually think Biden has a chance? It went to Trump by 200,000 in 2016.
Yeah, he has a chance. It's going to be a knife edge. I would expect Trump to pull it out, and that's just based on a hunch. The vote count is so tight. This could come down to just 100 votes or something. And we've got what? Okay, they've just started recounting, so I'm not up on the last 15 minutes. But we were behind less than 20,000 votes. There were 25. I think it was 17,000 votes Biden was behind. There are 25,000 absentee ballots sitting there. They're counting right now. Those are from Atlanta, and those are absentee ballots from Democrats. They're heavily Democratic, but are they that heavily Democratic? And we don't know. I mean, it's just flip your coin. I would think that Biden's going to just fall short, but that's a hunch. It's not. It's based on Georgia being a very conservative state, and watching the other election returns around Georgia. So yeah, I wouldn't expect so. But again, it's a state that's been changing. There have been people moving in. Black turnout was very high. So, either one could win. But let's wait and count the votes, because Georgia might be the closest state of all. It really does look tight. So, I'd give it to Trump on the nod. But it's a 50-50 race.
Another question from Instagram. What challenges do you see facing the country and the world with either candidate winning?
Well,
easy question there, John. Easy question.
This is a slight global crisis that everyone's kind of aware of. And again, this is really interesting. If you're Republicans, I think the Republicans are going to come out of this election a bit chipper. If you're Mitch McConnell, not having Trump is an advantage because suddenly you've got a Democrat to run against. If Trump's in the presidency, everything that happens is his fault. And the anemic COVID response is his fault, by the way. But this is something that McConnell can now hang around Biden's neck. What happens when the vaccine comes out? What happens with all the economic dislocation that's going to come if it's not quick? Suddenly the Republicans could start blaming Biden for everything that happens now on, and that is a much better platform for them to run for election in 2018. Or no, sorry, not 2018. Into 2022. So we'll see where we get on that. But I think they should be chipper. But Biden's going to be facing all the same problems of Trump, and he wants to unpick all the stuff Trump's been doing. So that's going to be difficult. He's going to face a Republican Senate, and they're going to get a say on who he hires to do it. So that's a problem. And it will be very, very hard 2 years for Biden, I would say. And again, that's on top of COVID and the problems of economic dislocation from that, climate change, the looming trade war and security issues with China. He's got a full plate. And again, the Republicans are going to make his life really hard all the way.
Another one from Facebook here. If Biden wins, a lot of if Biden wins going on here today. What will this mean in regards to the US-UK special relationship and its impact on Brexit?
Well, there's a fun one. First of all, Boris Johnson is a big fan of Donald Trump and has made no bones about that. I think his foreign policy team cottoned on to that being a problem a few weeks ago, and have been trying to row back. But again, this is a guy who made nasty comments about Obama, being a Kenyan. So whoever Biden hires as his foreign policy team, they're going to be members of the Obama administration. They're going to remember that comment. Boris Johnson is going to be in their bad books from the very beginning. Secondly, Biden is an ardent. He's very proud of his Irish Catholic roots, and he is very committed to the Northern Ireland peace process and the Good Friday Agreement. So, if anything in the Brexit deal threatens that, the U.S. will be be voicing its displeasure, and so that's going to again make relations more difficult. Third, the trade deal. I'm a little more relaxed about that. To be honest, Donald Trump is the most dangerous to his allies. He's known for stabbing his friends in the back. So the thought he was going to offer Britain this great trade deal, he loved it because he could split Britain off of Europe and he could divide and conquer. He sees the mainstream European countries as the enemy. And so that will reset. Biden is going to shift American attention more towards the continental Europe. EU is a much bigger trading entity than the UK. So I don't know what the results will be, but no matter what happens, the U.S. attention is going to be less focused on the UK. That might be good because again, Donald Trump's attention is not always a good thing. He caused Boris Johnson no end of trouble over Huawei, and the 5G network. So be careful who your friends are as well as your enemies. But yeah, so we'll see. It's going to be a reset to the Obama years. If you want to see how they get along with Europe, just look at what the priorities of the Obama administration was.
Another one from Facebook here from Alex. Why do you think the last two elections have shifted towards much older candidates? Clinton was 46 at inauguration, Obama 47, and W. Bush 54. Trump was 70 in 2016, Biden's 77 now, Sanders is 79, Hillary Clinton was 69 when she ran in 2016. Why are we seeing much older presidential candidates?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's just luck of the draw to a certain extent. I mean, Trump is Trump, and he just was the age he was. He hasn't changed a lot. Biden hasn't changed a lot in his career either. So again, the only reason Biden got nominated was because he's the perfect anti-Trump. And I don't think he would have I don't think he would have the same chance if he'd been running against a more mainstream Republican candidate. Again, we had the candidates there. There were a huge number of debates. The party was not able to coalesce around one that was younger. Buttigieg had a lot of popularity, but he was really young. So, you had some issues there with some people not being experienced enough, some people being too old. But I don't know what the deal is with that. But Biden's alternative was Bernie Sanders, so you weren't going to get a young candidate either way. Sorry. I don't know why that is, but the Republicans, the senators I'm mentioning are starting to get a bit older as well, because they had their chance in 2016 and they lost. So it's 8 years later that they'll be running. So I think you might see this again, but we'll see whether either party throws up a young candidate who can capture people's imagination. You might get that with Nikki Haley from the Republican Party, previous governor of South Carolina. But again, we're talking about someone in their 50s being young. So I'm not sure you see it. Yeah, again, will you see another Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or George W. Bush? I don't know. I think it's just the times. You just get the candidates you get, and if someone's career is at the right place in the right time and they have the right qualities to capture the party's interest, it happens. It's just luck.
Another one from Instagram here, and quite a big one that we've seen come up over and over again is what effect do you think social media has had on this election, i.e. conspiracy theories on the right, etc. But also, is there now one form of campaigning that is bigger than others? Is social media now a better platform than rallies and things like that? Or do they all still have such a big factor in campaigning for the presidency?
Yeah, this was a weird campaign. It was a weird set of candidates as well. So this was pretty exceptional. But social media really came into its own in this race, because you couldn't have. Trump was having rallies, but I don't know how many of his supporters he's managed to kill off. But it was a real problem. His most prominent black supporter, Herman Cain, died of COVID after attending Trump's Tulsa rally in Oklahoma. Now that will come back after there's a vaccine of some sort, or it becomes safer. But social media was absolutely a key advertising component of both campaigns. There was a load of money flowing into Facebook and Twitter, not Twitter, but Facebook and again Google searches in particular. So Google and Facebook hoovered up billions of dollars, and that's not going to change. You can micro-target the people who are watching it. They'll still use television ads. All my friends in my family in North Carolina were just cursing because you couldn't turn the television on without seeing wall-to-wall political ads, and everyone hates that. But this is the irony: is everyone pretty much has decided who they're going to vote for, aside from a small group of 5% of the voters, and we spent billions of dollars trying to convince 5% of the public to vote one way or the other. So it is a bit ludicrous, but yeah, social media will be a big part of this. It was a big part in terms of spreading news. Donald Trump won the nomination for the Republican Party, and he won the presidency more or less campaigning on Twitter. I don't know. He's really effective at using social media, and I don't know if the next candidate will be, but it'll still be a major part of the campaign. And again, the use of information. Again, Donald Trump likes to spread misinformation. He likes to spread conspiracy theories. It was perfect for him. He's the ultimate social media campaigner, but I don't know if the next one's going to be like that.
So do you not think this kind of sets a trend of if you're a candidate like Trump, that almost an easy win is to just keep spreading misinformation and use social media how he's used it? And obviously we've seen the social media platforms trying to combat that, but quite ineffectively, really. So do you think this is a new trend in campaigning, is the use of misinformation is now so powerful when you're campaigning for presidency?
Yeah, absolutely, and this isn't going away. I mean, just wait, because we're going to have a huge fight on our hands over COVID restrictions. So yeah, suddenly, if Biden tries to bring in, guidelines around mask use nationally, again, he can't pose this. He has to try to use, the CDC and various medical experts to come up with guidelines and then try to get the states to adopt them. But once the vaccine comes out, oh lordy, I mean, just wait for the fights over that. And again, the amount of misinformation and conspiracy theories are going to go through the roof. I'm not looking forward to it. Again, I'm in a career in which I dedicate myself to carefully considering evidence and analyzing it, and being able to come to critical decisions on the basis of facts. So yeah, the current post-truth era is a little bit depressing from where I sit.
So a question from Haley, and we've also had a similar question on Instagram as well, is do you think Trump will accept a loss? And if not, what then happens if he refuses to concede?
Well, that's easy. Hell no, he's not. He hasn't accepted that he lost the popular vote in 2016 yet. I mean, he lost. Hillary Clinton won 2 million more votes than he did. Okay, he won the election. No one's contesting that. But he still claims that he won the popular vote, but there were 2 million illegal aliens who voted improperly, and voter fraud meant that Hillary was said to have won the popular vote. So yeah, okay, if he can't even accept that he won properly, what's he going to do when if he actually loses the election? No, he's not going quietly. You're gonna have to drag him out by his fingernails. And again, he'll fight court cases. He's going to try to challenge all the results. And then if he does lose, again, I'm not worried about a peaceful transition of power. I think he'll go if they ratify the election for Biden. That's it. I don't think he'll try to cling on, but he's not going quietly. Because Democrats are very fearful about what he's going to do to wreck the place on his way out. He'll also spend a couple of months pardoning a large number of people, including himself. So yeah, he's going to be looking to try to create whatever legacy things he can. And again, he hates not being the center of attention. Everyone will be looking to Biden and saying, "Oh, what's going to happen? Is a vaccine coming? Is it?" Yeah. Remember, Trump's in charge until January 20th. So, yeah, as the vaccine begins to roll out, if we get one, Trump will be doing that, and he'll want the attention. So this isn't over yet. Yeah, he's still got a last act in this play, and it's going to be quite a loud one, I suspect.
And this all happens quite quickly now, doesn't it? Because the Electoral College, they vote on a certain date, don't they? So he hasn't really got much time to contest this, has he, in terms of the results and the vote counting?
No, and again, he's not contesting the results. And again, this is a normal process in voting. You get all these ballots in, and again, American ballots are extraordinarily complicated, and so, and particularly with absentee ballots, you have to follow certain procedures. You have to have signed your envelope. You have to have witness signatures on it as well, just to say you had actually filled out the ballot in front of them. You have to then seal it in a second envelope and send that in. And again, you can challenge all these. If people don't follow all those rules, yeah, you can claim the ballot is spoiled and should be thrown out. So what Trump wants to do is challenge as many ballots as possible, and to just every ballot that has a slight problem with it, you have to make a judgment call. And this happens in this country as well. If someone makes a stray mark, what do you do? And he wants to throw all those out. And again, most people would say, well, okay, is there clear intent? Is there no clear, lack of a signature or anything like that? What happens if the signatures don't quite match? And it looks like someone scribbled something quickly and you're not sure it matches their old signature. Well, Trump would say, throw it out. And again, the Democrats would say, we should count all the votes. So that's what he's doing. And again, he wants to, one of his lawsuits in Michigan, he's trying to stop the count because he wants to put loads of Republican observers in looking over the shoulder of all the counters. And again, that's, he's not contesting the results. He's just trying to throw a monkey wrench into the process and to try to get as much information as he can to potentially appeal the results afterwards. Again, he's going to try to get them to throw out more ballots, and we'll see where that goes. The judiciary has not been terribly sympathetic to him on that front so far, but we'll see.
But how long does he have to get this? He's not got long to do this, has he?
Yeah, well, I mean, each state ratifies their own election. So, yeah, this is a state-by-state fight. And this is what happened in 2000. It came down to Florida. The Florida State Supreme Court was overseeing a recount, and they were doing it really, really carefully. It was taking a long time. And so the Supreme Court stepped in and said, nope, you got to finish by December. Sorry, too late. We're going to go take whatever the state ratified the first time. And so, again, the Supreme Court precedent is that you have to finish by December. And so if each state ratifies the result, it would be very difficult for Trump to overturn that. Again, he's going to try to do that. He's calling for recounts. He's going to try to challenge some ballots. But in a state like Wisconsin, for example, the previous Republican governor, who's very Trump-like himself, Scott Walker, has already tweeted out that we can recount, but it'll only make a difference of a few hundred votes. He's not going to overturn Biden's win. So, I don't think any of these legal maneuvers are going to change the outcome. But, we have to go through the process.
A question from Mike, quite a big question, really. Obviously, America's the world's oldest democracy. Mike said, does the Electoral College need reforming, and how would that be achieved?
Well, I mean, we'll see what happens with this election. If Trump wins, there's a real problem with the way in which the U.S. is structured and the way in which these elections are structured. I mean, if you have an election in which Joe Biden wins 3 million more popular votes than Donald Trump and then loses the election, there's a huge Democratic deficit there. Now, again, there's a problem with the Senate. The Democrats win a majority of votes throughout the nation, and they still don't control the Senate. The Senate has a huge rural bias to it, just because of the luck of history and the fact they have all these small states. Is there a solution for that? Not really. It would require a constitutional amendment. Why would the Republicans agree to something that would remove them from power permanently? The U.S. has got a big, long-seated problem. And again, you see this in Trump versus Biden, the rural areas versus the urban areas. And that is a structural issue in the United States. It is vastly biased towards rural areas. And that creates this culture war. And actually, the U.S. is much less divided than you think it is in terms of the population as a whole. So, again, public opinion may say one thing, but the actual political system is biased in another direction. So, again, it's a huge issue. It's a problem for democracy. Is it going to change? No, because we've entrenched this system in which it's hard to change.
A question from Joe is, if anything does end up in the Supreme Court, what impact will its new composition have on those cases?
Well, I mean, in terms of the election, I don't know. Amy Barrett is not as sympathetic as other judges were. So again, they could overturn a few of these decisions. But once judges get on the court, she's not Trump's puppet. She's on for life. She can do what she wants. She can completely remake her career if she wants to. I don't think she is. She's a rock solid conservative, way more conservative than most of the rest of the court. But she's her own person, and I don't see the Supreme Court trying to overturn, a clear election victory from Joe Biden. So I mean, they technically could, but I would be deeply stunned if they did it. So it's not something I worry about. In terms of politics, this is going to be a huge thing because they're already hearing two cases. They're hearing a case about Obamacare, so they could overturn the entire American healthcare system with no obvious solution to it on the horizon. Trump tried to overturn Obamacare and he lost by one vote. John McCain, famously from Arizona, casting his vote with the Democrats to block that. So Obamacare will come up. The Supreme Court, Amy Barrett, again, has been very hostile towards that. They could overturn, this law, and that would be huge because the Democrats can't put it back again. They don't have a majority anymore. So, we could completely upend the American healthcare system during a time of COVID. That would be great. Secondly, abortion is going to come up. We could reignite the abortion wars, which I expect to happen actually. So the Supreme Court will probably overturn Roe versus. They won't say they overturn Roe versus Wade, but they'll nibble away at it and they'll make it less effective, and they'll basically let states regulate themselves around issues of abortion. So again, I expect the culture wars to really ramp up in the next 2 years, and the Supreme Court will be a big part of that.
So we'll take a few more questions from Facebook, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Joe said, outside of Harris, do you see any females winning the major party nominations in the future?
Well, yeah, Harris didn't win the nomination. I mean, Biden appointed her. So yeah, um, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the women candidates had problems because of Hillary Clinton losing, and again the perception at the very least that people don't want women candidates necessarily. I think the Democratic Party is happy to nominate them, but they worry they'll lose, and the Democratic Party was absolutely adamant they get a candidate that can win this time. But again, if you look at senators, there's not this, and there's a number of women senators out there. There's a number of very prominent ones, and I mean, you don't get women governors so often, but you get a few. So it is slowly changing, but not as fast as we would like. But again, it depends on who you're running against. Running against Trump after Hillary Clinton's really bruising campaign in which she lost. That poisoned the waters to a certain extent. And I think if we get past that and we have another 4 years of normal political fighting, let's wait and see. I think women candidates were doing fairly well in much of the campaign. There were quite a few of them out there, and Kamala Harris is certainly the front runner if Biden doesn't run for re-election next time. But there'll be others as well. I don't know if she'll get challenged or not. That will be an interesting thing to see.
Another question from Instagram is: are the 2022 midterms poised for GOP success?
I would say yes. Traditionally, the midterms, you lose a few seats if you're the party in power. It's kind of hard to know how you define power. The Senate is Republican, but the House is Democratic, but it's the president everyone looks to. Even though Biden has very little power to do things as president, he'll be blamed for everything. So yeah, if I were the Republicans, if I were Mitch McConnell, my strategy would be wreck the presidency and blame Biden for everything that doesn't happen, and try to regain a majority of the House on the basis of that, and then solidify your majority in the Senate. Yeah, I would think they're in a good position. Again, not having Trump there for the mainstream Republican Party is an advantage.
So do you think if Trump loses, do you think they're going to completely distance themselves from him and just start afresh from the Republican side of things?
Distance is the wrong word, but not having him there could be an advantage in some ways. Again, not having him blamed for everything. This is a party that's quite brutal about wanting power and being pragmatic about how to get it. Yeah, so they don't have to repudiate him. He'll be gone. He's going to have a load of court cases. He's going to have to fight a federal case with the IRS because it looks like he took some very, very dodgy tax rebates. He's going to be subpoenaed by the state of New York almost immediately upon getting out of office. So, this is a man who will be busy, and so I don't know if the Republican Party will necessarily have to repudiate him. But again, he won't be there as the figurehead. He won't be in charge. You won't be putting Trump's face up every single time you talk about every issue, and again, that will help the party's image in many ways. Particularly around COVID. They're not going to take the blame for this. Biden now has to impose these unpopular restrictions that may hurt the economy, but try to protect people's health. If the vaccine comes in, who knows what happens with the vaccine? Who gets it first? What do you do if people don't want to take it? In my day, when you didn't have your normal vaccinations, if you don't have your MMR, they banned you from the public schools. In the time of COVID, we're going to have a debate about that. What's happened? The Keele students can think about this. What are the staff going to say if a number of students refuse the vaccine? It's well, do you get to have face-to-face teaching? I don't know. These are going to be horrific issues to negotiate in every country. But again, Biden's going to carry the can for that. He'll be blamed for a lot of this. And so the Republicans can see, advantages in that. I think the Republicans are quite chipper at the moment.
Uh, so, second to last question. Grant said, in reference to the Electoral College, what does John think about the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, the MPVIC, as a way to bypass the requirement of a constitutional amendment?
Yeah, this is the notion that a number of states have done this, and what they've done is they passed a law saying, look, we need to award. I mean, the way it works now is you vote for president, and whoever wins each state gets all their votes, winner take all. There's a first past the post. The interstate compact would say, okay, let's just award all these votes proportionally, and then that way, whoever wins the nation will win the presidency. Now the problem is, this is also unilateral disarmament. If all the Democratic states award loads of Republican votes for however the Republican does, but the Republican states don't, it would be insane. So the compact basically says this doesn't take effect until a certain number of states ratify it. Okay, we don't. It's certainly a possibility. I don't see any other way of changing it. So it's worth a try. I'm rather skeptical it will work. Why would a Republican state, unilaterally disarm? So you'd have to win state by state. And that would be difficult. Secondly, the Supreme Court may invalidate it. It's very unclear whether that would pass muster in the Supreme Court. And so, it's got a lot of obstacles, but it's more likely than anything else. We're not going to pass a constitutional amendment. So I think, the Democrats have got a real disadvantage in terms of how they run for president. The popular vote is not how they're decided. And so anything they can do to try to rectify that would help. But I don't really see a great future there. The first start would be to try to, we got redistricting now, so try to ungerrymander the states. And that would be a first start. But electoral college is just a really big reach. I don't think that's going to get reformed.
And we'll finish on the last question. We put the Instagram story out yesterday with the question box. The first question that came in, and I think we'll finish on this, is if Trump wins, will the world end?
You've had 4 years of Trump and the world didn't end. That's why he has almost won re-election now. Again, this is people have these odd views of what will happen to a president, and I've seen this before in 2000 when Bush won in this really nastily contested election in Florida. A number of Democrats were arguing, oh well, people will see what the Republicans are like and we'll be in power in 4 years. That's not how the world works. Bush was in power for 4 years, and everyone went, yeah, nothing too bad happened. I mean, the Iraq War was raging at the time, but it seemed like it was a victory at that moment. And, he got reelected. Trump, again, went through 4 years. If it had not been for COVID, he would have won re-election. And the worries of the Democrats about trade war, about everything falling apart, hadn't completely happened. I would, as a political scientist, I would argue he's wrecking the engines of government at the national level. That's his intent. He wants to make government look incompetent and corrupt and awful so that people will never trust the national government to do anything. He's been really effective at that. And again, that creates a small c conservative country where you look to local government, you look to states. You do not look to the national government to do stuff.
Fascinating. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure you're doing endless interviews at the moment on conversations as well. And hopefully you get some sleep as well around watching the results and things like that. But yeah, thank you everyone for your comments and questions as well. It's been great. Thank you for joining us. And who knows, we'll maybe do another one of these, Jonathan, depending on what happens over the next few days. But thank you so much, and thanks for watching.
Hopefully tonight. I'm hoping for results by tonight.
Yes, hopefully. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.